Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is episode number 178. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by a very special guest. I have not seen his handsome face in a little while, but he's back with us. Tom from Moore's Law is Dead and from the Broken Silicon podcast. Tom, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing well today. The one thing I will say is I expected to be more tired because I keep doing this thing where I play Elden Ring until about 5 a.m. and it's becoming a real issue. But whatever reason, I am more awake than I think I have any right to be.
Well, you're on that second wind, perhaps, and maybe you'll collapse a little later. Well, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. I wanted to tell everyone, towards the beginning of the year, we're recording this and putting this up in early April, but towards the beginning of the year, I actually reached out to Tom because I was like, I kind of want to start paying you to appear on the show as like an analyst. I think it's unfair to continue to tap people over and over again and be like, can you just come on my podcast and tell me all of the things that you know and all of your expertise? I think it's a little ridiculous. We started this trend with Rick Hogue, our friend who is our quote unquote legal analyst. And I'm pleased to tell everyone today that you are quote unquote our tech analyst for whatever that is worth. But I'm very happy to have you in that position because I think it's really fun to have you on the show. You're great on the show. You know a lot and you contribute a lot to that. So I just wanted to thank you again for being here. I know you're busy with your own content as well.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate, having that, having the opportunity to come on and do this because I really wish there was more cross-pollination between different types of gaming channels, and being able to come on here regularly frankly allows me to just help cross-pollinate into a podcast that I'm already a fan of. So it's awesome.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And you're very welcome here. So today we're structuring this, Tom already knows, but we're structuring this and I'll tell the audience out there. I want to first touch on, because this is going to be a tech-centric episode, I want to touch on Spartacus or the PlayStation Plus upgrade. We'll specifically talk about PS3 backwards compatibility and some insights there. I also want to ask you about what your thoughts are with Vita and even with the possibility of virtual console trophies and all of that. And we can talk about that. And then PSVR2, just want to touch base on that. We don't know too much more, but we've seen a little bit more and people have started to go hands-on with it and talk more freely about it. So we'll get there. And then I want to top everything off with just PS5 talk. I want to talk about how the console is doing and the manufacturing. And I want to talk about the possibility of a redesign and the possibility of a pro console. So we have a lot to tackle. But let's start with Spartacus stuff, because I'm really eager to get your take on. And before we even get into the nitty gritty, how do you feel just as a user of the PlayStation Plus kind of redesign? Are you going to be a subscriber at the higher tiers, or are you not interested in this?
I don't think so right now, for the same reason I'm not typically a subscriber of Game Pass. Now, I have multiple times in the past subscribed to Game Pass. I think the first time I really did was to play State of Decay 2 with my friend who came over for the weekend. So we just both got it for like $1. And that was, right, I think, already 2 years ago. And I'm paying this is a co-op game that typically has a playtime of like 20 to 40 hours. So we played it for a month with some friends and then we were done. And then recently Halo Infinite came out and Age of Empires 4 came out. I'm a huge Age of Empires fan. And we played that for a while for $1, me and my brother. And then when it stopped, I just bought Age of Empires on Steam. And I'll get Halo Infinite to play the campaign and when the co-op comes out, which it seems like the co-op's coming out after the Bloodborne remaster. That's what that seems like to me, which is seemingly never, even though they keep promising, or it keeps seeming like it's going to come out the next month.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, please.
Well, I was just going to say, it's I'm in the same boat with you where I don't know if I'm sure you have seen around the time that we're publishing this. I don't know if Sony has fixed it in quotes yet, but people have been loading up on PS Now subscriptions at $60 a year because Sony has explicitly said that they will turn into the premium tier PlayStation Plus. And I was thinking about it.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So people have just been like, Wario 64 and all these characters have been tweeting about it. And then there's been stories written about it. And they haven't shut it off. So I don't know if they're just like, whatever, man. But for me, I'm the same way where I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to subscribe to this thing. I don't really know that I care. So for me, I'm kind of happy maybe with just the PlayStation Plus as it exists. But I'm happy for other people if that's what they're looking for.
I think it depends, right, on who you are, what stage of life you're in. But for me, I don't know if this is something we've talked about, but it's something I've talked about on my podcast multiple times with my co-host Dan. Like, I don't have a want for games to play. I'm playing
Right.
Elden Ring. I haven't beaten Far Cry 6 yet, although very close. I haven't beaten Returnal yet. They just added a new co-op mode, so I'm
Yep.
excited about that.
Indeed.
I haven't beaten Halo Infinite yet. I haven't beaten, and then after all of that, I recently, in the middle of the night, just bought a few games like a few months ago. The Spider-Man, both of the Spider-Man remasters on PS5, or I guess one of them's not a remaster. One of them is just natively PS5, and then the other one was remastered for PS5. What else? I haven't beaten what is it? Days Gone yet. I haven't
Oh my God.
beaten
You're behind. You're
I haven't
behind.
beaten the recent Doom. I haven't beaten. I mean, there's a million games,
Indeed.
and so it's like when people go, "Well, yeah, but don't you wish you could play all these hundreds of games?" It's like that's like my. I wake up in a sweat that I have more
Yes.
games I need to play. I
Yes.
don't want
Yes.
more games. I bought Elden Ring because I want to play that this month, and I want to keep it forever, and I don't want someone to pull it out like a rug under me and be like, "Oh, guess what? You got to resubscribe to play it again." And that's why I bought Age of Empires 4. I know I'm going to be playing Age of Empires 4 for years, years and years and years. I mean, I played Age of Empires 3. They come out like once every 2 decades. So, I mean, I'll just own the game,
I feel the
and
same.
that's everything I say about Game Pass, I would say about PlayStation. The caveat is what I like about PlayStation Plus is if you were subscribed that month, you keep it forever. So I don't need to worry about, oh, I got to go play Fallen Order before they remove it from Game Pass because that sucks. I
Yeah,
don't want
it's
to play it this month.
right. I think you have to be you can grab it, but then I think you have to reactivate to access it if you are lapsed, right?
But they pull games from Game
Oh, yeah,
Pass.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. And I agree with you, by the way, completely. I know the audience knows this about me already, and you listen, so you know, is that I am meticulous and slow. And like Elden Ring, I was just like, this is too much. Age of Empires is way too sophisticated for me. Like, I would probably blow my head off if I tried to play that game. It's just
Well,
way, yeah, please.
I've made my choice. That's the RTS I like, and it is the one I like the most. But it's like, hey, have you tried Total War? Have you tried what is it, StarCraft? And it's like the mental capacity for me to micro a Dutch bank boom in Age of Empires 3 took months to perfect. No, I'm not going to learn how to use any other team in another RTS.
Yeah,
This was
that's
its
too much.
own college course to get good at what the Aztecs. I think I was good at the Aztecs, the Russians, and the Dutch in Age of Empires 3. Like really good, like beating higher tiered people, competitively good. I don't have the mental capacity to learn another RTS. No,
No,
no, no, no, no, no.
no, I totally understand. It's the same thing as I've said about Civilization, which is not an RTS, but a strategy game, a turn-based strategy game where I just played it wrong for years, or not wrong, but just totally incompletely until I finally sat down for like days and just studied
If you just
these
look up
videos.
one strategy for a team, you'll realize you're the dumbest person ever. like some of the stuff I learned, like getting good at some of these teams on Age of Empires 4, which I think I've chosen the Russians or the Rus, they're called back then. It's like, yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't even know they got that bonus from doing that with deer. What? And then I completely changed my strategy.
Yeah, it's these games. I can't. In some way, I would like to, but in some way, I know that they'd become a job for me. But I'm with you on the. I'm not looking for more games. I appreciate that there are different kinds of gamers. So a gamer that's looking to game on a budget or have a Netflix style smorgasbord of games or whatever the case might be, I totally respect that. But I'm not looking to game on a budget, and I'm not. In fact, I would argue that some of these people are just spending more money than I am because I'm just buying things as I want to play them,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm not into that at all. But I'm happy that people are into it. But there is a caveat, of course, and this is the first thing I wanted to ask you about, which was that PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility does not seem well, it's not. It's not going to be natively available when the product launches in June or the PlayStation Plus refresh launches in June. This is unfathomable to me. Like I can't fucking believe that this is still going on this long into the lifestyle cycle of not only the PS4 but the PS5. And I don't know if you agree with me on this, and I'll throw it to you. You can say whatever you want, but there are mega corporations out there that put out quietly sometimes and publicly other times bounties internally and externally to come and solve really complicated technical problems. And I feel like this is one of those issues where Sony could turn it into a really interesting PR and marketing thing to be like, come be part of PlayStation's history, help us, unleash the PlayStation 3. We'll pay X amount of money and we'll give you access to all these different things. And I don't know. I just feel like this is a thing where people would love to be part of that because they love PlayStation. And I feel like it's just inexcusable. I know I don't know anything, so you're probably going to laugh at me when in saying that, but I just do not get how you cannot figure this out. Please talk to me about it, Tom.
I think I do now. And I was talking to some of my friends about it last night while playing Elden Ring with them. And they started laughing like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. And so I guess I actually even like prepared a statement for this part here because I do have to be careful what I say.
Okay,
So my
please.
PS3 backwards compatibility info comes from a handful of sources over the past few years. But I got a lot more about a month ago from a couple of them, like a lot more, to the point that I think I could answer any question you have about what's taking so long. But I don't want to dive into it myself because I've got to think carefully about how I answer each question.
Certainly.
And so I was actually walking my dog last night, listening to the latest Sacred Symbols. And you and Chris Reagan and Dustin talking about like what could it be? I was laughing so hard because I'm like, you got a couple of statements you guys guesses you had are very close to actually what's going on, except there's a couple of wrinkles that I think are missing for why it's not here yet. And I say yet because of course they're working on it. And I think I said this both times I was on previously on Sacred Symbols Plus, where I said they will have to have it eventually. They will not keep using cell processors that, though die shrunk by now, are based on 90 nanometer technology. Like they will not keep using servers. I think Chris talked about that in the last Sacred Symbols, like that they literally can't. There's no way. They have to have something in the lab somewhere. They do. They do have something in the lab right now. And they've actually had it longer, I think, than anyone probably suspected they did. So I don't know if you have a specific question about why it's taking so long, or
Well,
I don't know. I don't, or even what you would say to what I just said.
well, that I mean, that's first of all, it's fascinating. I would have to imagine. I mean, that's the thing is that you always assume that the company that you're studying is one or two steps ahead of you. They have all the inherent knowledge, they have the initiative, so they can do everything before you even know it's a problem. So when things like this arise, you just have to assume that a company like Sony realizes within the boardrooms of the company that we need to fix this problem. This is a problem. But I guess, let's start because you said about specifics. I just want to start with like, can you get into specifically why this is such a huge problem? I mean, can you answer that question like safely? Like, what is it that has been so complex that this has taken? It went the entire PS4 generation and all the way into PS5.
So and this is, I think, will give kind of will change the colors of some of the things in the picture. Everyone's looking at and scratching their head. They don't know why this isn't here yet. The cell processor was quite a decision by Sony. It is immensely complicated, but ultimately very powerful if you find ways to use it effectively and mitigate its weaknesses. Here's the thing. How DICE decided to mitigate a weakness is different than, for example, how someone at Sony Santa Monica did, is
Interesting.
different from how somebody at Ubisoft did. So if you think about it, then when you're trying to get these games working on an emulator, the issues of one game may be different entirely from the issues of another game. And in other words, they're not really building an emulator for one console. It's as if they have to build one for each game because each game, especially late in the cycle, and you can go look at like DICE did some, of course, Guerrilla Games did some really interesting tech presentations around Killzone 2 and 3. DICE did some really, really interesting presentations around Battlefield 3. Like they found a way to get anti-aliasing to run off of the, I forgot they're called, I think the SP, some like off of the mini cores on the cell processors. They're actually running anti-aliasing off the cell processor that I believe the Xbox 360 didn't even have anti-aliasing. But to fit the buffer correctly, I think it runs at 704p instead of 720p. There's all of these
Interesting.
odd tricks they did to mitigate the lack of cache, like all of these different things the PS3 had, they had to work around. And
Well,
they
let me
were
interrupt real quick. The PS3, it's true that the PS3, half of its RAM capability was taken by the OS immediately, right? Like, so they were never left with more than that. And
I don't remember the way it works is the 360 has half a gig of RAM total, unified like the PS5, like the PS4, not unified anymore for some reason. And then actually I could explain why it isn't now too, but and then the PS3 it honestly just works like a desktop. It's half a gig is for the VRAM for the graphics card, half a gig is for the processor. And I think it even has two memory controllers. In fact, I believe the system RAM it uses was ultra low latency or something and really advanced bespoke stuff. But the problem was it was a quarter gig each, right? Or yeah, quarter gig each. So if it's a desktop back then and you have 2 gigabytes for the CPU, 2 gigabytes for VRAM, or even just one, that's plenty of RAM. But if you have a quarter gig only for the CPU, only for the VRAM, even if it's really good RAM, that's a whole monster right there. And then you have this processor that's frankly stronger than the PS4s that you need to feed with this really like esoteric RAM. And then and there's all stuff with like a lack of cache, the fact that there's a lot of delineating of tasks. If you do it all correctly or in a smart way, I should even say, it works well. But the way DICE decided to do it is different than the way Guerrilla decided to do it, is different than the way people for Assassin's Creed decided to do it. And so when they're testing these games, they've actually been working on this before the PS5. I'll say that. And they've gotten it running before the PS5 for like 2 games, but then the others don't work.
Right.
And so right now, my understanding is there are dozens of games that actually work okay, but they don't think it's reliable yet. And I actually think that's a mistake, that they need to just finish and ship this feature. Because if you look it up, the Xbox One launched with like 70 games, barely even worked when it first got backwards compatibility.
Right.
So, I don't know why they're taking so long, but I think for them, it's a matter of goals and constraints, and they just think they need it done eventually. They don't see the money in getting it done quickly now. Like, I bet if they pulled Nixus or like, someone like an entire dev team, they get it done in 6 months, but they're like, we'd rather you make another game.
Right. No, totally. That makes sense to me. And it's fascinating, actually, because what you're describing is exactly what has happened with backwards compatibility on Xbox One. So why would it really be any different to say, like, listen, we're going to be ready with 30 games, and every so often we're going to have more games to announce? I mean, Microsoft did that for years. So you're right. It's never been positioned like that. That would be great. I would hope. I think some people have a problem with the fact that this machine can't read old discs or whatever, but I don't.
And I didn't promise it's ever going to get that, by the way.
Right. No, of course. But even then, people are like, it's unacceptable that the PS5 can't read a PS1 disc. And I'm like, is it really? Like, what the fuck do you want the PS5 to read a PS1 disc
I don't know.
for?
Yeah. It'd be cool if it did, but, and I don't think there's a good answer for why it can't. It could if they wanted it to, but I don't know.
So, all right. So that is really interesting insight, that they have to basically kind of really figure this out. Maybe the solution is that they will cede some money to the third parties and find also support studios and maybe get this done at a quicker clip. But for now, maybe, and like you said, maybe they're just waiting for there to be a high fail rate at these PS3 farms to realize to flip the switch as well. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, what I would say is I'm like, I don't know if I should put a percentage on it, but I'm very confident they will have this fixed before the PS6, because they're not dumb. They know they can't just abandon like 500 games on a console that you can't play anymore. They know
right
it, but they don't think they need it yet, because plenty of people still working PS3s to this day, and they don't see how they're going to profit off of this neck yet. And I think I've said this to you, like, I just don't get, all right, so you basically have to make an emulator per game. So then just get a studio, then build a studio like Nixus and just have them once a month remaster Killzone or something. Like every month we have a new game come out. I don't understand why they don't even do that, and I don't have a good answer. All I know is that they've been working on this for a very long time, and it's not a matter that it's hard to emulate the PS3. It's that they basically have to build 100 emulators to get it working, because I would imagine they want it to work well. And I mean, you can even kind of get some insight into how they talked about PS4 backwards compatibility, where they were like, it works most of the time, and then we tried it out. It always works. What are you talking about?
Yeah, there were like 7 games that didn't work or something out of 1,500 or whatever, which was amazing.
Which is, to this day, the Xbox One, Xbox Series X can only play like a couple hundred or something original Xbox games. Like they kind of put in the same amount of effort for that. So it's not like, and yet Xbox just advertises, we have full backwards compatibility, even though they really don't. And then Sony's cagey about admitting 7 games don't work. So I wonder how much of this backwards compatibility thing is they really want it to be perfect when it rolls out. And I also am under the impression that they want it to not just run the games. I don't know if they can manipulate frame rate with the backwards compatibility, because I think that's often just locked into the engine. But I do think they want to have it like standard running in 4K, like just every PS3 game at least, or something. They want to try to do that.
Right. That would be sweet. And just to put a fine point on it before we move on from this, I just wanted to reiterate what I've said to the audience in the past, which is that, in my opinion, it is more important that they get the PS3 games running well than PS2 or PS1 by a mile. Because I think it's PS3. Like, it's great that we're getting the PS2 and PS1 stuff, and it's exciting, and I was there for that stuff, just like a lot of you guys, and I know and I get it. But the PS3 is when PlayStation started to actually have an identity that was about its games, not about the DVD player, not about the zeitgeist of the add-on modem or Crash Bandicoot, the things that they don't even own. This is when we had, you know, Infamous and Resistance and all of this interesting stuff that is just stuck, like you said, on this console. And I think it's urgent for them to, because people are going to go back and look and say, like, yeah, we're so happy we have this and this and this from PS1 and PS2, but PS3, man, that was the heart and soul. Like, only the very diehard stayed around during that era. And it's almost like they forgot about that. And so I feel like there's some sort of creative urgency to fix that problem, but it's good to know that it's possible.
Well, I just want to play Killzone 3 co-op again. Like stuff. That's my simple answer is little things like that. I wish I could play that again. I wish I could. God, Resistance 1 co-op was pretty fun too. There was a lot of great things I wish I could just play, and I don't. And again, the money is there too. You remaster it, and then you could even sell an update per game. Like you, and maybe that's what maybe that's what they're trying to do. Maybe they just want it to work perfectly, and then they want to start like selling, hey, $10, this is where you get a patch or a download for it. If you already own, you can upgrade it to like PS5 ish mode. I don't know, but my understanding is it will be done by the PS6. They have the people that have been working on it. I mean, I can't say exactly since when, but apparently far longer than I expected when I first was told those details. And I just don't think they see the money in it yet, but they know it will be a major issue if it's not done eventually. I think there's just a disagreement between them and the fans of when it needs to get done. And I don't actually even know who's right, because no one really cared that the PS3 didn't have backwards compatibility with the PS4. I know it's an entirely different situation. Like, it was not as old then, but I don't know. I don't know who's right too. Like, when it really is a monetary issue, because will it ever really be? Only when they can't resell games, I guess. I don't know. It's hard for me to even argue.
Yeah, my the skeptical person inside me, the bad angel on my shoulder, or the devil on my shoulder, is telling me, "Oh, they want to sell a Killzone collection. They want to sell an Infamous collection. But they haven't." That's the thing, is if these games were coming out and we're like, "Oh yeah, here's an Infamous collection in 2017, and here's a port of Demon Souls and and all this random shit," but they just haven't done it, right? And so there is more to it than I think meets the eye, and I'm glad that we have some insight into that. Something that was less surprising to me, although I think is much less surprising, but I think is worth talking about, is the lack of Vita support for this new program, this new PlayStation Plus. Now, this isn't a surprise to me, except for one thing, that PlayStation TV already has a bunch of Vita games being played on DualShock 3 and DualShock 4. So these patches already exist. Like, games like Persona 4 Golden are totally playable on PlayStation TV with a PS3 controller. You don't need a Vita. And so Chris has this theory that they're holding on to this. I disagree with him, because I don't think it has any value outside of bolstering the catalog as it is. There are a few really important games on Vita, but not like an Uncharted game and Freedom Wars and all these games. But do you think that they'll ever let this Vita be solved, this Vita problem be solved, maybe with the PS5 or the PS4? I was thinking that maybe the front touch could be replicated with the touchpad,
Oh,
but
yeah, that's a good.
but but there is back touch. There's gyros. Like a game like Uncharted Golden Abyss, for people that haven't played it, you would need the front touch, the back touch, the gyro, and the camera. Because
But
you
you
need to
can
put
get
it up
by
to,
with the
I don't know if you ever
camera.
played it, but you need to put the camera up to lights.
No, I did.
Yeah,
I actually thought it was pretty cool.
It was super cool, but that means that it can never be played. Like, they would need to patch all that stuff out. So it's a very manual process. Do you feel like we'll see Vita stuff, or do you understand why they didn't fold the PS TV into it?
There's a PlayStation camera, so you can use that.
That's true.
In terms of the touchpad, I don't know how you do that one to one. I don't
think you can. It was just very similar to how they would map stuff to the touchpad if you had like a native Vita game running and you actually did the stuff to give it a button map, a custom button map on PS4.
I think you can map the backpad to the touchpad on the PS5. I think they would just one-to-one translate pretty easily. But yeah, the touch screen, I don't really see how you do that. That's the only issue. So solving the Vita problem is an interesting. I haven't even really thought about that. What I would say is, I don't know why they haven't done all of this already. Again, it's like, I think they should have backwards compatibility by now. I think they should have PS1, PS2, Vita here by now. For the Vita, though, I think maybe they go game by game and have a patch for it, and then you can rebuy it or something. I don't know, but it doesn't seem It would take a dedicated team. It's just I think there should. I think there should be a dedicated PS3 team. There should be a dedicated Vita team. And then every month, like they say, hey, every month on the top tier of PlayStation Premium, you get a PS3 remaster and a Vita or PSP or PS2 remaster for free. We're just adding it every month, or you can pay $10 for them. It just seems like a money-making machine to me, but it would require work. So, but then build the teams. And I don't think there's this, lack of talent argument as much here. You don't need Neil Druckmann to be ahead of this team. You could have just a competent programmer. There's a lot of great programmers that can just put their head down and get work done. So I think it would require a dedicated team, but I don't think there's a good excuse for why they haven't done that yet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they dust the Vita off at some point. I found, knowing how crazy Sony PR is and marketing, how specific and just very laser focused they are. When I saw, and it's not a spoiler, but when the Vita appeared pretty prominently in The Last of Us Part 2, I was like, holy shit. I actually couldn't believe that. Because I was like, I can't believe they're acknowledging this in what is arguably that console's biggest game, in which you are clearly playing another team's game, Hotline Miami. And I'm like, this is incredible. So maybe there's some people there with some soft spot for the Vita still, and we'll see that pulled through.
I'm sure there are. And, I've interviewed quite a few devs on my podcast, and I got to say, there's not a single dev that doesn't love the Vita. So if you're
strange,
a techie person, you love the Vita.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean, our new game, which will be announced around the time this podcast comes out, we were building natively on Vita. We built all of our games natively on Vita on an old version of GameMaker, and then would port it to a new version of GameMaker to bring it to everything else. And when they canceled development for the Vita, we had to move the game prematurely because we were ready to bring it in 2022. So it says a lot about that handheld, I think. We also did really well there. Okay. The last thing I wanted to ask you about Spartacus is just about trophies in a virtual console setting. This is obviously a very niche thing, but is interesting. Sony, for about 10 years, I was going back and looking, I even wrote one or two of the stories on IGN, have been patenting and then updating the patents for digital trophies on virtual consoles, going all the way back to the PS3 era. And I think a lot of this originally had to do with PSP and how they ended the plan for trophy support on that. So I think a lot of that stuff was left lingering. I think some of that was for like PlayStation Minis and all that random shit that they were doing. But I'm wondering how you feel about the possibility of this happening. I feel it's next to none. I feel like they know that there's interest in this. See, this is the teetering edge for me. If they're like, hey guys, our PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games, at least some of the big ones, have trophy support, I'd be like, oh, I'm in. Totally. I would love that. But I'm not going to go back and dick around with Siphon Filter just because. Do you feel like there's any possibility of having that taken care of, or do you think it's too big of a problem? Because the patent, I was just looking at the flow chart in the patent before we started, and it's literally, I actually have it up here still. Yeah, it's literally like start, perform emulation, and then detect triggers. Are all the required triggers detected? Assign them to the trophies. End. So like this, the flow chart of like what happens when you start up the module. Do you think that that's something that will happen or no?
When I hear a patent like that, I'm sure that's because like while we were talking, I was just going to the PlayStation Store on my web browser, and I was just like, and I know this is like from a defunct third party, but I just like one of my favorite games on PS2 was Mercenaries, and I love that game. I mean, I beat that game like 100 times. I can't buy that on the PlayStation Store, but who knows what will happen? Maybe they remaster it. Maybe
that's Pandemic, right? Mercenaries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I hear a patent like that, it's just so that if something happens where they get the rights to sell it on the PlayStation Store again, they can add trophies if they want to. Probably usually for first party, they still have control over the IP, which not that many of them because they squandered all forethought with first parties back then for some reason. And first party are like exclusive icon like characters, but I don't know. Do I think they're going to add trophies to every PS2 game? I'm not sure how many PS2 games, honestly, I really don't know, are on the PlayStation Store right now. But I imagine that patent is just so they can, and they figured out a way to do it. I'd be surprised if they went back and just overnight added it to every single game. Um, again, it's like, but they should if they know how to want to make money. Have a dedicated PS2 team, go back one by one, add a couple a couple upgrades, maybe better endostrophic filtering, high resolution, turn on a couple of things, unlock the frame rate in the games where it's easy to, and add trophies, sell it for $10. I don't know. I think that's just, but they need a dedicated team. And I think I'm just realizing, they need a dedicated PS2 team, a dedicated PS3 team, and a dedicated Vita team, maybe even a dedicated PSP team, because you just take these, make a good emulator, and then just give each team like 2 weeks to do the bare minimum to make it look better and get trophies, and then drop it one by one. I know it takes a lot of money and it'll take a lot of time, but God, it's just like, yeah, but you're like saving grain for the winter. It's like,
Exactly.
but
Yes.
within 2 years, you'll have you don't need to do all of them. You'll have 100 PSP, Vita, PS3 games on there. And anyone who boots up a PlayStation console knows whatever game they used to play as a kid, probably, maybe not every game, but the top 100, top 200 for each generation. You can just go back and look, that has trophy support. Look, it's in 4K. I can play it again. Like, I don't, I think we might be underestimating how much effort and time it would take to do that. Because again, any team that's going game by game for the PS2 could probably be making could probably be making DLC for the Last of Us factions or something eventually, and why not make them do that
Yeah,
instead
that's
of?
totally a
But I
balancing
think it's
act.
worth it.
I think so too. It goes back to what I say on the show sometimes. There's simply $1 million a year idea of having a council of 10 people paid $100,000 each that just vet the PlayStation Store. That's their entire job. Like, that is such a small investment, right? And just saying, like, is this game just barely playable? That's all that it has to pass the bar, and that's not even a bar that's passed by a lot of games on PSN. And you would think they would just care to eat around the edges. And the other thing I think that's really important, Tom, is once you take Infamous 1, 2009
Mhm.
Infamous 1 on PS3, and you give it all the bells and whistles and you treat it right and you bring it over, it's done. It's over.
I know.
It's
It's done.
forevermore. The Infamous is fine now, right? And that to me would be the thing. And they can play with the audience, right? Like, have some fun with the audience. So, like, we're going to have a vote every month. You're going to be able to vote on what game we do
Mhm.
next. You're going to be able to vote on what developer we should try to break down the door and get these. Like, have some fun. God forbid, celebrate your past, engage the audience, talk to them. I know it's very difficult, to
Well, I
to
mean,
imagine.
yeah, that would I don't know. That would require them acting like how they used to, like they
Right.
like to play games.
When they were desperate, which they are no
Yeah.
longer desperate. And I think that's kind of the that's the kind of
And I think
overarching theme. Yeah.
And I think you got to remember that $1 million console. Remember that $1 million can buy one ad in the Super Bowl where Kratos is drinking at a bar with an anime chick or whatever they're doing now for advertising, or like
Right.
playing chess while people race in a car. God, yeah, that was in a PlayStation press conference opening where they had that bizarre 2-minute trailer. That was crazy. I mean, that right there tells you like where their priorities are sometimes. I think that it's just hard for them to quantify why they would do this instead of someone, again, make a new hat for Spider-Man to wear that they can sell to you.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard to quantify, but there is a benefit to the just the fun of the community there. That to be honest, I think we're seeing a lot of gaming and groups not do that much anymore. Like, I don't even know who does stuff like that anymore. Like, I think Gabe Newell from Valve and Steam randomly decided to hand deliver some Steam Decks that were signed by him at their doors.
Yeah, which is
There.
cool.
See, there's an
Yeah.
example of
That's
just,
fun.
no, it's not
Oh,
worth his time, but it's fun.
yeah. I was gonna say, like, that to me, I'm like, I know that's fun marketing for them and all of that, but that's cool. Like, do engage with people. Don't do it just when you're losing. It comes off as so craven. I mean, but that's the PS3 era that they're almost ignoring because they almost forget the spirit. By them acknowledging those games, they have to acknowledge the spirit of that era. And I think
Mhm.
there is something about that. It's a different era. It's a different leadership. It's like Kaz Hirai and like a totally different group and totally different people. And it's pre-Cerny working on their hardware. And I don't know. There's so much politics there too, probably. I know there
Yeah,
definitely is.
you're making me realize that there's probably, yeah, because I can bet just back then you had different factions, and some people were like, we just need to maintain whatever. Other people were like, we need to, charge more for this and just hold our ground. And other people were like, let's make this fun and just make a ton of games and we'll win eventually. And that group obviously won out during the PS3 generation, but a lot of them might not work there anymore. I wonder how many people they got into arguments with in boardrooms who are like, well, whatever, now I'm in charge, and now I'm, let's play PlayStation and hold controllers in a weird way and just, like, you have to wonder if just another faction's in control, like 60% control. You still got the other people
Right.
there clearly who like having fun. You see Astrobot has all of this lineage to old PlayStation. So there's still plenty of people there that still think that way. But I think there's probably politics to it too, of just right now the group in charge. I don't want to call them the bean counters because someone's got to count the beans, but
Sure.
that's who it is. They're like, we've won. Now let's make sure it's as profitable as possible.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Jim, what game are you playing? I'm playing the newest hit from Polyphony Digital, Gran
Oh yeah, it
Turismo
is.
7.
That is very funny.
I love that.
Like when I hear that type of stuff.
Yeah, he's fun to make fun of. I'm sorry, Jim. All right. let's talk about PSVR2. How are you feeling about this thing now that we see a little bit more out of it? There was a PlayStation blog post a little bit ago, and we saw more, but people have been going on hands-on with GDC and talking a little more loosely than I'm surprised, actually. And though I'm not really hearing anything specific, I don't understand tech anyway, but what I'm hearing is that this thing is very impressive. I'm curious what your expectations are of PSVR2 and what your feeling is right now about it.
So actually, I need to take a opportunity to shamelessly plug my own
Please
podcast,
do.
Broken Silicon. I recorded the last episode yesterday. It drops. I still need to finish a few things with it, but it drops to patrons today, Monday, when we're recording, the 4th of April, and it will drop publicly on the 5th. My recent this guest that's dropping on Tuesday then is NX Gamer. I can't say what company he works for outside of his YouTube life, because he's actually got a pretty higher up job managing like data centers and
Interesting.
computer engineers. The guy really, really knows what he's talking about. He knows a lot of people at Sony. He knows a lot of people at a lot of studios. And, it's always fun to see what he will actually say publicly on the podcast. And one thing he opened up about more than I expected him to is PlayStation VR. So again, I can't recommend listening to that. It's probably the perfect time. I've dropped an episode that talks about PlayStation
Awesome.
a lot. Is when
Yeah,
I'm
please
coming
go
on your
support
Thick and
that.
Simples.
Please do.
But, you could probably ask him too at some point. He said a lot of interesting things about PSVR 2. So he said, and I think you'll find this interesting. I think we were all hoping that it would be wireless, right?
Yes.
And what's interesting is I had a network engineer on Broken Silicon like a year ago or so that said that Wi-Fi 6 that the PlayStation 5, I think the Series X also has, and the headset should have, is so low latency and high bandwidth wirelessly that they don't really need a cord anymore. It'll just cost more. And NX Gamer said to me, yeah, it's interesting. I'm not even that sure what the cord's for. And I'm like, what do you, and he
Hmm.
goes, a lot of the data is actually sent over Wi-Fi 6 already, hinting that it seems like the cord's mostly just used for power. And I was like, oh, well, that explains a lot then, because I bet they were like, it adds $100 to put a battery and then it weighs more. And then
Interesting.
we got to worry about 2-hour battery lives.
So we
If we remove
assume
all that,
we assume they were just using that cord for data transfer, but that's
which
not
they
the
are
case
for
at all.
some data, of
Right. Right.
course. But it seems like it's not necessary,
Interesting.
meaning there is a path to a wireless version in the future at some
Awesome.
point.
That's fun. That's exciting.
So that's exciting. Additionally, I can't say he's seen some stuff that suggests that it is going to be PlayStation 5 will be powerful enough. We touched on it briefly last time I was on Sacred Symbols, which is the foveated rendering where,
Right.
and I think some games I've played definitely already do it, which is they just kind of render in lower quality in the outer edges of the screen. But because it's on your eyes, like they can track it so it's even less noticeable than if they did it on a monitor or a TV. And I've heard that theoretically this can get to magnitudes better performance, like than if you didn't use it. Meaning, like instead of running it like, I don't know, right, 40 frames, you can get to 120. And each eye is above 1440p. In total, the total resolution is pretty close to 4K. So if there's a game, here's a good example. I think Resident Evil 8 typically runs at 60 frames on PS5, but it drops to like 45 once in a blue moon. With foveated rendering, I think Resident Evil 8 can just run at 120 for like full res. And so I guess that's another new piece of information that I got from Michael at NX Gamer just the other day, which is that it really seems like the PS5 is strong enough to fully run this not low-end VR device because of the specific stuff they've done with foveated rendering that is really exciting devs. And he told me as well that it seems like the plan is not so much to have like an exclusive Killzone, although of course we know of an exclusive Horizon,
Right.
although who knows how big it really is. That they want to make it as easy as possible to add VR versions of every game. So, and
Nice.
the more I think about it, it seems like a smarter strategy because I don't think first of all, if I'm Sony, I'm not paying $100 million to make a Killzone that you can't buy without a VR device. That'd be insane. Second of all, I think I'm more likely to buy a PSVR 2 if you tell me I can play Resident Evil 8 and Cyberpunk in VR than if I get a different Killzone. Because I think I'd rather play Resident Evil 8.
So like an
actually.
accompanying device as opposed to its own platform.
And there will be exclusives.
Right, of
It
course.
will kind of be, but my understanding is the big initiative this time is they're going to really hound developers to say, hey, hey, we have the most popular VR device. We built this whole new SDK that's even easier to use than before. Add a VR mode to your game. And they want to try to make as many games as possible have a VR mode. And it sounds like because of foveated rendering, it's going to run at the frame rate you want it to and at a resolution higher than the overwhelming majority of VR devices on the market right now. So it seems frankly very well thought out. And the haptics, I think there might even be haptics in the headset I heard or
There
something.
are
Like,
haptics in the headset apparently. Yeah.
I think this is going to be a pretty cool device. I've had more time to really digest it since the last time we talked about it. And I think it's going to come down to, execution. If they go for it, I'm only hearing good things.
Yeah, from what little I've seen and read so far, not being super inside anymore, where I'm not hearing it just passively, it seems very positive to me. And I'm excited about it. Do you feel like there is one lingering question that's pretty important to people? And it came back into my mind with the release recently of Moss 2 on PSVR, which looks great. Do you think this thing's going to be backwards compatible with PSVR? Because it seems like there seems to be maybe a problem with that, which is like the camera is not there anymore. You would have to go back and maybe patch things, right? At least to make it compatible.
Yeah. So I would guess there's some apps that would just work, but my gut tells me you're going to have to do at least a minor patch per game, which to the PSVR didn't sell 20 million units. It sold like, I don't know, 5 million or
Yeah,
something.
something like
So
that.
did well for VR, but didn't do as well as the Move controllers that did 22 million, actually, I think. So, but because it's only sold 5 million, there's not a million games for it. I bet it'll be easy to convince developers to do a patch. This also wasn't a PS3 VR device, it was a PS4 VR device. So
Right.
I think it's probably going to be easy to convince developers to patch most of their games, I think. But I'm guessing it requires one.
Thank God they didn't. They were messing around with a lot of VR stuff during the late PS3 era. I've talked about how I played some of it. I played
Mhm.
Datora, that game Datora, with they were literally like duct taping PlayStation Move controllers to like these headsets, and it was super interesting. It was awesome, but it was like, thank God you guys didn't start them, because we would have this device that would be even more dead and isolated than the PlayStation 3 itself. I like PSVR. I'm excited about not having the processing box anymore. The wire gives them
Mhm.
flexibility. I think it sounds cool. How much do you think the thing's going to cost?
I mean, you put a gun up to my head. I say $400. I mean, I don't think more than that, though. I think that it's going to look really impressive for $400 too. The only spec it has that's not crazy is field of view, but I believe it's still slightly higher than the PSVR ones. And I guess it felt a little bit like you had a cardboard box on in some games with the PSVR one, but I think 110 degrees is pretty good. It's not like the 170 that's kind of becoming standard on PC, but I think that's good enough. And so outside of that, I think it's going to be easy for them to market all of its high-end features. But when I hear, there's no battery. So if you think about it, like I think the Quest 2 is what you might compare this to, because that's kind of the one most people are buying right now. The Quest 2 is wireless. This is not wireless. That removes a lot of cost, and you replace that with haptics and stuff. So the more I think about it, I don't see why it would need to cost more than $400.
Right
I
on.
don't think so.
That would be very tantalizing. Cheaper than the console, which when VR came to PS4, they were the same price. And I think that people were saying it can't be. All we know is it can't be more than the console. It would be nice to
Mhm.
now trend downwards to say now it's less than the console. I think that would be a logical move for them and be very attractive to push it. Do you think
I
it'll? I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead,
would
please.
say this. I would be equally as surprised if it was $300 as if it was $500. So could it be 500? Yes. I wouldn't rule out 300 though, or 350 either. So I think 400, but no more than 500, no less than 3.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Sony always stay. I mean, I guess all the hardware manufacturers kind of do, but they stay away from the 149, 249, 349, 449 kind of thing with the consoles. But then they embrace a lot of weird pricing with their peripherals. Anyway, I'm curious, when do you think this thing will come out? Because I was talking about this on the show. Some people were saying I was talking out of my ass. I might have been, but and you'll set me straight one way or the other. Does the PSVR 2 compete at all with PlayStation 5 in terms of getting both of them manufactured, or can they both be safely manufactured together? Because my one thought was like, wouldn't it be more important for you to make as many PS5s as possible, delay this thing, or stack them up, just manufacture them and put them away?
I mean, the answer
Yeah,
is yes, the PS5 is more important, but no, I don't think so. I wouldn't. I don't think it really will compete with it at all. And in fact, NX. This is another thing NX Gamer brought up, which he seems to be under the impression it will that we're going to see a. Yeah, actually, he said he's worried that there would be an announcement before the podcast drops, which I don't. Seems like there won't be, but he's heard that there could be an imminent some form of decent showcase, and that it's probably coming out the end of this year.
Nice. That would be awesome. I had heard rumblings that manufacturing, they were getting all that in order earlier this year. You probably know way more about that than I do. So sounds like they might be popping them out. And of course, I always have to bring up the famous PS3 Slim in the Singapore market video, which is the fucking funniest video ever. When everyone's like, "That's fake," and it ended up being real. The best thing ever. Love that video. All right, let's move on to PS5 as we begin to wrap up. I want to just ask you to begin before we talk about the possibilities of new machines within the PS5 line. How's it doing? How are you feeling about it? It seems like it's still they're still selling everything they can. I think Sony obviously is totally crestfallen that they had to cut their goals, their manufacturing goals, which I imagine that was just absolutely brutal when they had to do that in there, when they decided that they had to do that, because I think they had already cut once before they even announced their numbers. So they're not able to make as many of these things as they want. It seems like they can make every one they want. And I'm hearing anecdotal evidence that Xbox is not as hard to find now as it was. And the PS5.
It is not. I can buy one right now.
Right. So there you go. So PS5 seems to be still supply constrained. I think it works for and against them in different ways, but certainly against them in a lot of ways. So how are you just feeling about the console now that we're in 2022, moving through into Q2? What are you thinking about it?
I don't know that I have that much to say about the availability, because I think it is clearly getting better. It is for all of the consoles, all graphics cards, all gaming devices seem to be improving in availability. Besides, I guess, the Steam Deck, which that's a whole other discussion. I'm not even sure how many of those they even plan to make. But I think that where we are right now is the consoles have been well received, and it's about okay. It's again, this is actually something I just talked about with an ex-gamer, which is, do you think they've lived up to the hype? I mean, let me ask you, has the PS5 lived up to the hype for you so far?
Not with the games, no. But I think it takes time. But I think the machine is very elegant. I really have enjoyed using it and learning it and building up that muscle memory with it. Remember when PS5 came out, I was complaining about all the muscle memory and all the extra keystrokes. But in reality, it's a really wonderful machine. And the SSD, the two things that really stand out to me is just the SSD. With Far Cry 6 you brought up earlier, I was laughing because Far Cry 6 takes like a beat, and I'm like, come on, as it's loading. And then the other thing is the DualSense is just amazing. I think the DualSense is fucking amazing. It's an amazing controller. And whether you're playing it just comes out, whether it's in Returnal or whether it's in Ratchet or whether I'm playing now Ghostwire Tokyo, which uses it really expertly. It's really cool. So I'm feeling, I mean, has it met, I mean, how are you feeling? Do you think that I'm on track here with it? I think that the games need to be better. I think that we need more next gen only games to really discover what it can do. But for now, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I thought we'd see more crazy showcases of capabilities by now. I guess the closest to that we've seen is Ratchet and Clank, which is really a halfway to fully utilizing the SSD.
Right. There's a lot of drama around that game as far as like whether it really can. Yeah, exactly.
You're not running that on PS4. I maintain that. But or if you do, again, it's going to be like.
Yeah, we discussed that on the last episode or maybe the first episode,
just
right?
Get ready to see how it looks. But but it does use the SSD in a way that I don't think you could pretty much run that type of game on anything else. But I say pretty much. It's still not like, it's not the holy grail that Cerny said, asset streaming, which I want to see, which is, and again, they just so everyone knows, like the way games work is they are rendering much more than you're actually seeing at once, because you need to load it in so that if you interact with it or see it, if you turn around quickly, the objects there. And a good example of this going badly is Cyberpunk on last gen, where NPCs apparently disappeared behind you as you turned around. Why did they do that? Because the CPU was too weak and the graphics card was too weak. And they said, not only do we not have the horsepower to make NPCs be rendered in case you turn around quickly, but we're just going to remove them entirely because the CPU can't handle keeping track of more than 100 people at once. So what Mark Cerny promised is, because it can stream in assets almost instantly, that you should only have to render half as much as usual. You'll still need the CPU keeping track of all the AI like on paper, but that you don't need to render them. That should give you massive performance increases. We still haven't seen that. Now, what's again interesting is, and I'm just bringing it up because I just talked about it, it's very fresh in my mind. An ex-gamer said he thought we would see a game that did that for the first time at the end of last year, that was pulled last minute. So I'm assuming that game is coming out later this year. There's a couple other games we talked about too that are supposedly big showcases, but hearing him say that, I go, how much of this is that they needed more polish, which I'm sure there's some of that, and how much of this is they just don't have a reason to release their big guns yet? And I don't know. I think it's always a balance of both because, like, let's say I'll say this one game he opened up about was Metal Gear Solid Remake, which I opened up too, and we were both just laughing, like, where the hell is this game? And it's like, yeah, but think about it. If they released it, assuming it hasn't been canceled, which at this point I have no idea because
Right.
it's been so long. But if it came out now, that'd be terrible. So it's coming out next to Horizon, Elden Ring, Gran Turismo, a new Borderlands came out that got better scores than the previous two. No one even talks about
Right.
it.
That game looks. I think that game looks awesome, but yeah, no one cares. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very
There's
interesting.
isn't there? There's Dying Light 2 came out.
Dying Light
a
2, right?
million
MLB
games.
The Show is coming out, and I think today, Lego Star Wars. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah, so it's like I don't know how many of these games not being shown off are they just don't need them yet, and how much of it is whatever. But I would say overall, it hasn't lived up to my wildest expectations or hopes for what we would see by now. But I find myself using it far more than I thought I would because it's just so good to use. And I underestimated the ease of use factor that this thing would bring to the table. I think again, patent, TM, end of this year then is when we will see the games that make people stop questioning if these consoles are really, and we're gonna have to see. I still hear pretty crazy claims of what you can do with the SSD, not for loading, but also for performance reasons. We'll just have to see if that actually happens. But a lot of people think that will happen with a couple surprise announced games at the end of this year.
yeah, that'll be fun, man. I think there's no doubt we video game analysts know that it is unusually quiet the last couple of years in terms of announcements. And it's like shoveling a yard, but you're shoveling the snow and then putting it at the end of the driveway. Eventually, you're going to get to the end of the driveway, and then there's all of this snow you need to get through. And
Yeah,
I think that they're kind of getting to that point because there are. I said on the last show, like I was hearing that the Dead Island 2, they're going to announce and then release like pretty quickly this summer, right? Like because there's not even time to even marinate. Not that that's a great example because that game is fucking announced 10 years ago, but like they're just going to start shitting things out, I think, because they have to just get out of the way of all the stuff. And as everything gets delayed, it just makes the problem worse and worse and worse. So there's going to be a year like 2023 or 2024 when there's just going to be so many games, more than you can even imagine, I think.
I think what we're seeing right now is 2008 for the PS3, which is that at the beginning of the year, people were like, I don't know, but by the end of the year, I think that was when Little Big Planet, Metal Gear Solid, and what else? What was the end? Resistance 2 came out in the same year. That was like that big E3 where people stopped arguing if PlayStation has any games.
Yeah, because it was the fall of 2007 was Uncharted, and then that went right into the year of Little Big Planet, and then Killzone 2, I think, was 2008.
Killzone 2 was 2009. I know because I was
2009.
really excited for that when it got delayed like 3 years in a row.
And so there's a lot of there was like some random second party stuff early on. Some of it wasn't very good, but like Haze and I don't know, there's a lot of random shit.
I disagree. I got Haze for $4 used and played it with my friend, and it is a good laugh to play through.
Yeah, that's $4 is a good price for that game. The pollen that game was about pollen or some weird shit, as I remember.
It's about it was about nectar.
Nectar, I'm sorry.
And
nectar.
the Lobos people. I actually remember quite a bit of that stupid story. To be honest,
that's so funny. Well, interesting.
But you should just do a Haze spoiler cast out of the blue.
That'll be fun.
And we're going to talk about our secret favorite game that we're going to just admit we like. And you just go for 3 hours about Haze.
Yeah, they never gave that bad boy trophies. I'll tell you that.
Nope, and it's never. It was supposed to be a third-party game that came to other consoles. They just didn't bother.
They didn't bother.
But no, I guess what I'm saying though is I think now is 2008. You can say we're gonna have one of those games with one of those years with too many games. I think we're already there, and I think it's going to be hard to keep track of everything over that. And again, people said that about 2008, and then 2009 rolled around with like Killzone 2, and I think Uncharted 2 also came out in the same year,
yep.
And then 2010, and then and I just think this is what we're going to see. Is I think this is the start, and I actually think there's just going to be nonstop games for the next 3 years. And if I'm Sony, I'm like, every 2 months is what we're going to try to do then, because we cannot. And now they're probably readjusting it. They're like, man, we wish Horizon came out a month sooner.
Yes, totally. they probably could have released it sooner too. They got that extra little time to, and there were some peculiar problems with that game. Yeah, 2009 was interesting because that was Infamous, Uncharted 2, Resistance 2. There's a lot of good shit that year on PlayStation 3, and that's what I'm saying. We gotta go back. We gotta go back. In the words of Lost. Okay, there are two other things on PS5 I want to ask you. Let's talk about the possibility of a redesign first. We're actually getting into the territory where by this time next year, PS3 Slim had come out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty crazy to think about, but it's true. And the price had dropped by 50% at that point, from $600 to $300. Now that's not going to happen here, but
I don't think
do
so.
you anticipate that? I mean, I'm sure they're very eager to redesign it, and I'm sure their redesign's already done to minimize components they need and all of these kinds of things. But do you anticipate a redesign and a price drop as quickly as we got it with PS3?
I would say that when the PS5 launched, my understanding it was honestly about breaking even. It depends on, I think one of them was making a profit, the disc, and then I think the discless was not making a profit. They announced officially that they're profiting on the PS5, although they didn't say which one. So I don't know if they're averaging if it's a profit between the two models, but eventually, then of course, in early 2021, they announced they're profiting on each PS5 sold. And then they were quiet. And I think with RAM prices exploding and shipping issues, I'm guessing they weren't profiting. I think shortages are getting better. They're probably going to be about back to breaking even about now. And they're probably pretty happy with that. So I think by the end of this year, there is a world where they could drop the price if they need to, but I don't think they need to. And the real question will be if, I mean, I can already get Series S's easily. Frankly, Series S's are often now found for below the price, like $250 sometimes
Hmm.
on special deals. If that starts happening with the Series X, which we should at discount it could. I mean, I believe a year after the Xbox One X came out, it was $400 like the PS4 Pro. And then the PS4 Pro still never got a price drop. So I think the question is if Microsoft drops the price on their consoles to just keep getting them in hands, hopefully, if that'll make Sony drop the price. I'm not sure. I think maybe, but uh, I don't know if it needs a price drop. I mean, would you drop the price unless you're
No.
unless you can get them at a Best Buy? And even then, it's up for debate if they should still do it.
Yeah, I think once you can find them, then you don't even cut the price for a while. Because I think there are two things that are true right now for PS5 that were not true for PS3 and PS4 when they got their slims and they got their price cuts, which is there's drastic inflationary pressure and there is drastic shipping costs. And those things have, I think, shooken everything up and maybe shaking their plans up internally as far as, well, inflation, even if inflation's not affecting them, they can say it is and just keep the box at the same price. And we know that shipping manufacturing, as we talked about on the last episode we were doing together, is outrageous. That's coming down, but it's still several times higher.
It's never going to come down to where it was.
Right,
though,
exactly.
It's always going to be more than where we were in 2019.
So that those two things I think are relevant in the consideration for PlayStation. Not to mention that the PS5 is just very popular. I wanted to ask you finally about a point of, this is a topic of contention for many people when we talk about it for some reason, but PS5 Pro.
Yeah.
I feel like this is, we know it's, I mean, you have a lot of information about the possibilities of a Pro. I'm always intrigued by the Pro model because Sony never really seemed to acknowledge PS4 Pro after it came out. They never talked about how it's sold. They never talked about why it's impossible to find. They never talked about anything. They just were like, yeah, okay. And when you could find them on Amazon, you'd buy one, and otherwise you'd just buy a slim model. And it was just weird. Like, they didn't seem to really care. And it actually ended up being much cooler than I thought it was. People that listened to me back in the day will know I was totally vehemently against the Pro console. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But that was totally unfounded. So is there a possibility of a PS5 Pro? Do you think that this will be a thing we'll be talking about this year, next year, whenever?
Well, again, and of course, I leaked it. I leaked that both Microsoft and PlayStation were working on several types of refresh consoles late last year, and that just elicited outrage. In fact, I was Googling around before we started talking today, and I actually want to read, I just want to, I think that there's something going on here where I think everyone just needs to take off their anger, whatever, just calm down, take a step back and listen to what I'm saying here, guys, because I found my old leak on the PlayStation 5 Reddit, which is funny that it was negatively downvoted my PlayStation 5 Pro leak because they really upvoted my Santa Monica interview, so it doesn't seem like everyone hates me there.
Right.
And
they're like,
and I found a quote that I just want to read. Literally, one of the top upvoted quotes of that Reddit post was, "There's no way Sony would release a PS5 Pro for a few years." And my answer to this person on Reddit is, no fucking shit. My leak said 2023 or 2024. So 2.5 to 3 years after I said. So yeah, you're right.
Right.
Then if you'd watch my video, everyone listening right now, you would know I didn't say it was coming out the same year. Sorry, I think we're allowed to swear on this
No, of course.
podcast.
Please do.
But
I insist.
and it just really, you probably see it on me, because it annoys the shit out of me, because you see people go, "This doesn't make any sense. It's too soon." It's not coming out now.
Right.
And that's number one. And then number two, if Sony does a redesign, the number one goal will be to do a redesign that, even if it gives you more performance, allows them to make more of them. So if you see a PS5 Pro launch, guys, they can make more of them than the PS5 base. That's why they're also doing it. This isn't stopping them from making more. They would be making less if they didn't do this redesign. In
Okay.
fact, yeah, I'm not mad at you, Colin. I'm
No,
just very
please don't
passionate about
please
it.
get riled up. I insist. Get it out.
But when I look at the PS4 Pro's die size, for example, it was 322 millimeters squared, and the PS4 base die size was, God, where is it? Let me see here. Because I believe the PS4 Pro actually had a smaller die than the PS4 base. And so that's probably going to be true of this as well. The question is what they decide to do. And I have my own opinions about what I think they should do, but I actually want to throw it over to you. And that's why, I said, we talked beforehand, like, are we going to get any reader mails? Because
Right.
I just want to dispel misconceptions and really level set what people want out of this, because Sony's got options. When I leaked that PS5 Pro leak, I was told that both Xbox and PlayStation were working on some pretty big redesigns on a newer node, typical to what you saw from PS4 to PS4 Pro, which is to say about doubling performance and some new features. Now, they can do that, or an idea I had that 100% they could do, and I wonder if this is actually what they're deciding to do, is just die shrink it to 6 nanometer, which is just to make sure everyone understands. So 5 and 4 nanometer are their own family. 7 and 6 nanometer are their own family, which is what the PlayStation 5 uses now. If they move to 5 nanometer, millions of dollars of design costs, completely redesign the whole thing. If they move to 6 nanometer, it's like a 10 to 20% overall bump in whatever you want to use that for, density, clock speeds, whatever. And it's mostly design compatible. So they don't need to spend a lot of money to do it.
Right.
So personally, what I think they should do is they should just die shrink the PS5 to 6 nanometer. And then at this point, my understanding is the RAM on the market is getting up to about 50% faster than what's in the PS5. It doesn't cost any more to buy. Like they literally right now are buying faster RAM and then downclocking it to meet the spec of the PS5. So
Interesting.
from my perspective, I think what I'm hearing from the community is, instead of in 2024 launching something 3 times stronger than the PS5 for $600, $700, what they do is they just die shrink to 6 nanometer now. Right now, the PS5 is 4 compute units disabled. Don't disable them. Leave all 40 enabled. Obviously, in some games, they'll have to disable them for compatibility reasons, and then just clock it a little faster and give it 50, 100% faster RAM and maybe double the storage. And I think for $550, $600, they could get out something. Frankly, they could probably get it out at the end of this year if they wanted to. I just don't think they will. That is 50% stronger, and every game is dynamic resolution. So whatever, it's like, now it's just lock 4K 60. And then I think really the galaxy brain part of this idea, if you will,
Right.
is that they're still going to have to disable some of these. So sure, the ones you disable to the 36 compute units, clock them lower, make that the $400 PS5 Slim. And they could just keep basically using the same die for a Pro and a non-Pro. It'd be on 6 nanometer. You get more dies per wafer, probably. You can make more of them. And then you avoid this whole thing of like people being mad there's a $700 console, and you can make more of them. That's what I think Sony should do. But I don't know. Maybe you would like, and it's interesting because I think everyone listening to this has their own opinions, but I would really ask people to ask themselves, are you sure you'll have the same opinion in 3 years? Because no one was mad at the PS4 Pro when it came out. Like, are you sure you don't want something 3 times better that can just like do full ray tracing or something? Because that's on the table if
Right.
they did a redesign for 2024.
Right. I totally agree with you. I'm not technical enough to know what I think that they should do. I will say this, though. that I'm technical enough to know, and we've discussed this in the past, and certainly discussed it on Sacred as well, is there is something fundamentally wrong with the PS5 in terms of the way it's breaking for people, like the way some games just don't work for people, and so on and so forth. And I'm worried that I don't want them to multiply that problem. I want them to like fix that problem. It's something that a lot of people don't talk about. I don't even know how to put it eloquently, but like you are seeing people's games. Well, our own editor Ben had that problem with Returnal, where he had to like get a whole new PS5 just because the game will not
Yeah,
play
I have no
Returnal.
idea what that is.
And it's
I
happening
can
with like
guess,
various
but
games, which are much be like a component, maybe a component issue. And so I don't want them to get too cute by half where something more catastrophic happens to them, you know?
so I don't know if this is the issue, but I can hazard a guess.
Mm.
That might give people an idea of what type of issue it might be. So, for example, I know NVIDIA did this with a graphics card. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the RTX 2080 or something. It was one of their higher end cards, and most of those have like, let's say they have, I don't remember exactly how many guys, but let's just say it's like 60 SMs. That's what NVIDIA calls their compute units. So they have like 60 SMs, and they disable, much like the PS5, 4 of them, and then they sell that as the card so they can, and then the best deals they actually usually use for a professional card, they sell for twice as much. And so that's what they do. Now, remember, the reason they do that is out of the 60 SMs, they expect 20% of these to have a defect somewhere, or to have, even if it doesn't have a defect, maybe it requires more voltage to run at the same speed as the other ones. And they're like, yeah, disable that. My understanding is based on which SM was disabled for that NVIDIA graphics card, you could have 3% lower performance. Because if you think about it, it's an array. The way one where some of them could be disabled would actually have communication issues if it was farther away from the other ones. They just kind of conveniently didn't tell anyone some of them are 5% weaker than the others. Now, I don't know if that's what it is with the PS5, but they're disabling 4 compute units. So I wonder if, depending on which 4 are defective, some games, not all games, are programmed a specific way that has a problem with that compute unit being disabled. That's my guess. And if that's what it is, they can fix that in a hardware revision, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think that they are probably quietly trying to track the commonalities between the machines that are broken as they get them in and all
Could
that.
be memory too, by the way. It could be they got the GDDR6 from Micron instead of Samsung. It could be a defect in one of Micron's, shipments of memory. That's also happened with graphics cards.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So that would be my only, layman concern is like, let's make sure that we're all buttoned up. But Tom, that's all I have. I mean, that's it. That's all I have for this episode. This was fun. I mean, this was illuminating. I know people like us talking about hardware more. I'm certainly not going to hazard doing that without your expertise on board. So thank you for being here. Do you want to promote your stuff so people can know where to find you?
Well, I think I'm going to do what I usually do first, which is say just one more thing, Colin.
Oh, yes,
before I
please.
go.
Oh, yeah, that's always your thing. Please. Yes.
Which is just to be clear, like, I've heard from an AMD engineer too recently that just because something's designed doesn't mean it's coming out. So I actually think there's a chance Sony's reacted to the negative press, you guys. And I just want to make sure you guys are sure in 3 years, if one doesn't come out, that you were happy with what you said on Reddit.
Right.
Because Sony doesn't care. They just want to make money selling games. So if you tell them not to make it, they might listen. And in a few years, when there's a Series X refresh, which I'm 100% sure is coming out, that's double the performance, and you're stuck on your base PS5, maybe you'll go, maybe I shouldn't have bitched on Reddit.
Yeah. How dare you?
Because they do listen to you. And the other thing is there's a million other things they can do as well. And I just want to make it clear that there's room on the table based on what I know about the upcoming architectures from AMD for them to make some stuff that's like a lot better. Like fully enabling ray tracing, keeping up with PCs. And I just don't know why you would care if that comes out, because you've been gaming for 3 years, and if you couldn't get a PS5, cool, now you can get this better one. But
I agree. I'm totally with you. My opinion on this has totally changed over time. So I totally agree with your stance there. And hopefully we'll see a redesign and we'll see a redesign, but a refresh of the Pro type model as well. We'll have to find out in the coming years.
There's going to be something from at least one of these. Like they're all working on it. There's no way they all decide to not make anything. And I'm sure Xboxes might have stuff coming very soon, actually, for refreshing that Series S. So that's something to look out for as well. This isn't an Xbox podcast. So.
Oh, it's all good. I'm very happy to know that as well. So, all right, now promote yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm Moore's Law is Dead. You can find me on YouTube under that name. And you can also find my podcast, Broken Silicon, comes out almost every Tuesday. Sometimes there's some crazy press conference we delayed a day or two. It's happened twice in the past month, actually, unfortunately. Also there's a Patreon where you get that stuff early and ad free. And I think this is perfect timing if you're a PlayStation fan, because NX Gamer is dropping probably right when basically this Sacred Symbols Plus drops. And we talk about Metal Gear Solid Remake. We talk about PlayStation VR2, PlayStation Plus Premium, and a bunch of other stuff. So, I mean, check it out, guys.
Yeah, please do. Go support Tom. And thank you for your time today. I appreciate you. We'll have you back soon. Maybe we'll do another mailbag. Get your fucking blood boiling a little bit.
I got mad, and I apologize. I don't hate you guys. I just hate that one guy on Reddit. I do actually.
Sure. Yeah, you should. Fuck him. All right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, appreciate you. Appreciate you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Thank you for being here on Patreon. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
All right, bye, everybody.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.